Hmm. What about Eight-Legged Kitten?
Eight-legged kitten, what are you doing there, Mark?
Oh, hey, Kelly. Fancy meeting you here. I'm just trying to come up with a replacement title for the 13th movie in the James Bond franchise that doesn't sound obscene.
Ah, that is a good idea. What about octopus with a Y at the end?
Nah, too cumbersome. How about blue-ringed anatomical euphemistic pun?
You think that's less cumbersome than octopus with a Y at the end?
You're right. You're right. Oh, I've got it. Octo Kitty. We keep the double consonant diminutive ending, but with much less graphic imagery.
Perfect. So, we ready to do this thing?
I think so.
All right, then, everybody, grab your whistle controlled knockout gas
And your razor yo-yo of death.
and join us as we discuss James Bond here in the books.
And there in the movies.
Octo. Wait, seriously?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. They got away with it. They got away with it. Okay, so we'll start with a synopsis of the book, and this is the collection of four short stories ish that Ian Fleming did. These are his last, basically the last installments in the fiction of James Bond, and I think some of them were actually. I think this was published posthumously after he died. I think.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the synopsis. The last collection of James Bond adventures from Ian Fleming, Octopussy and the Living Daylights, features four tales of intrigue that push 007 to the limit and find the secret agent questioning where he can go from there. In Octokitty, a former operative in the Second World War must face the consequences of past sins when James Bond knocks on the door of his Caribbean fortress. And in The Property of a Lady, Bond deciphers the elaborate codes of a Sotheby's bidding war in order to catch a KGB agent. 007 in New York takes Bond to the titular city to warn an ex-agent of her boyfriend's secret KGB affiliation. And finally, The Living Daylights sends Bond to Berlin to protect a British agent before an assassin strikes. Published posthumously, I should have read my own script here, Octopussy and The Living Daylights marks Ian Fleming's final contribution to the legacy of his iconic creation, 007 James Bond.
Nice.
So, shall we start with Octo Kitty, the first book that was in the series. My book has
Okay.
the 007 in New York as the fourth story. So,
Yeah, same.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this I kind of like this story. We see it through the eyes of Dexter Smythe rather than James Bond. James Bond kind of comes in at the end, uh, and it's a little bit of just a little vignette of this guy who had created this sin of murdering a man to steal the what was it KGB gold? It said, uh,
Yeah,
or was it Russian or no? It was
it
it
was
was it was
German.
yeah German. It was Nazi gold. So
Yeah.
he steals the Nazi gold, and he ends up having to kill this kind of more benign character who helped him scale the mountain, um, and lugs this gold like down the mountain. It was kind of a nice almost adventure story when he goes back and tells about how he got the gold out of the country.
Mhm.
Um, but then James Bond tracks him down and kind of makes him pay for the crime because, and here's the best part of the story, uh, the he's not a Sherpa. What was it? Was he a ski instructor who was helping the guy get the gold and then ended up getting killed? Was kind of
Mhm.
like a father figure to James Bond, and so this was a nice roundabout way to get some kind of personal information about the James Bond character without it being so overt that it kind of breaks down, his this veneer of his, what would you call it, like a brick veneer of James Bond.
Yeah. Yeah, just the coldness and the hardness of his character that we always see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I agree. I really like this story. I I think you said, Mark, in a previous episode that Fleming's writing is at its best when he's describing Jamaica and all the stories that take place there. And I think that's so true. Like he describes the scenery and the fish and everything so beautifully. And um, you just like sometimes it's harder, I should say, for me to get into the stories that where Bond sort of flits in and out. But this one, I felt it was very easy for me to stay invested in it. And I don't know if it was just the tautness of the storytelling, or just because Dexter Smythe was a kind of an interesting character. I don't know what it was exactly, but I've really enjoyed this, and the part at the end with the octopus was I mean, it kind of gave me the chills. It was really creepy.
Agreed. You mentioned the tautness of the story. There's really great suspense he sets up because he tells the story a little bit non chronologically. So we see at the beginning, we see Smythe in the ocean. He has kind of made it a habit to go and feed these animals. He's living a comfortable life, living off of this gold he collected. And one of the animals is an octopus. He wants to see if the octopus will eat one of the deadly, was it angelfish?
Scorpionfish.
Scorpionfish. And so he's doing that. But then as he's doing it, he's thinking back to this meeting with James Bond, knowing that he's been caught and discovered. And James Bond has kind of let him have some time to think about what's about to happen because he's about to be arrested. But as a reader, we know he's most likely not going to be arrested. He's going to die somehow. Mm-hmm. And so you don't know, is it going to be James Bond killing him and actually assassinating him? Is it going to be him killing himself? Or is it going to be an accident? And so kind of that, we know he's not going to jail. And so this whole story, like, oh my gosh, is it going to be the octopus or the scorpionfish or Bond or what's going to happen? It kind of keeps you guessing till the end.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved something about this. I mean, it was obviously not as tense of a scene at all, but it gave me throwback vibes to Dr. No, the novel with the giant squid and all of those horrifying tests of the human will that Bond had to fight his way through. Just when Smythe was down there and he felt the blood was coming out of his lip and he was like, I should have taken my mask off. And then he felt the suckers slowly. And I was like, oh God, it really gets you.
Yeah. And throughout the whole franchise, the movies and the book, there's a lot of octopus imagery because one of the symbols of Spectre was an octopus. We saw that come back in the Daniel Craig books. And then it just shoots me back to the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise too, with Davy Jones and all the tentacles off his face.
Yeah.
So,
did you?
Nice. One last thing I was gonna. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think this is, I assume, where was it Spectre or Skyfall, where they had, where what's his name, Christoph Waltz plays. He's Oberhauser's son, right? And I think that's where that comes from, because there was reference in that movie to Oberhauser, who was this kind of father figure to Bond, and it talked about skiing in the Alps and everything, and that's why he was so obsessed with destroying Bond, was because his father liked him better.
Yes, you are correct. Which is funny because that's what I was about to say. Less correctly and less astutely was that reminded me, the Oberhauser reminded me more of Albert Finney's character, Kincaid in Skyfall, who was the one with the shotgun helping him defend the house. And I thought, is that where they got the name? Was that Oberhauser? But it was Kincaid. So I like that they drew from this story kind of in both those regards of including these father figures, and tying it back in.
It's an interesting and sort of random little bit to pluck from this story that just kind of gets muddled in with all the others, but it's pretty cool.
And I like that about the Daniel Craig stuff, is that they went back and tried to tell a little bit of the backstory. In Casino Royale, you have her kind of, what was her name? I forget.
Vesper.
Yeah, you have her kind of guessing that he was, guessing his history and all of the elements there, and find out she was correct. So cool.
We've got a comment here on our live feed. Sarah wants to know, do we take suggestions on books to review? I think we should take some suggestions.
Yeah.
Right?
Why not? Yeah. Sure. What you got? Sorry.
What you got?
Oh, man, I felt like there was something else.
Because we were considering Stephen King for the next run.
Oh, yeah.
And classic books. We were doing a lot of stuff, so.
Yeah, this would be a good time to mention. This will be our penultimate episode of James Bond. We're going to do a little roundup of the movies we haven't reviewed because they haven't had books that were direct representation. So after that, we are kind of spitballing right now what the next series should be, or if we should do some one-offs with some classic books like No Country for Old Men. I see a suggestion from my friend Matthew. That would be great too. I love me some
McCarthy. What's his name?
Yeah, love me some Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah. Because there'd be a lot of depression, but we could do The Road.
Don't you dare make me read The Road, Mark. Don't you do it.
we have done The Road, and I forced them to watch this. Okay, so shall we move on to the next story?
Sure.
Which is The Property of a Lady. So the movie Octopussy, just to give a little bit of preview, does draw from this as well as the titular story. So Property of a Lady is where we get the Fabergé egg, and that was always my favorite part of the movie too. I don't know why. I love how I just love that the kind of history of Russia and the Tsars commissioning all of this stuff. But it seemed a little bit anticlimactic.
I thought so too.
There's no gotcha with with Bond capturing the bad guy. It's just the story. I mean, the basic premise is they go to an auction to see who's betting on the Fabergé egg. They kind of explain the economics of trying to drive the bid up and how they're using it, basically money laundering, through the Fabergé egg and selling it to this woman who wouldn't normally have it. It's kind of suspicious, and so they tag the guy, and Bond kind of drives he goes back to his embassy, and that's the end of the story. Bond basically says he's going to be in trouble now, and that's it. So, but it was interesting, and I like the intrigue with the opulent Fabergé stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I definitely felt that same, not quite disappointment, but kind of disappointment at the end, because it almost literally is like, I thought and I hoped that he was going to do this, and he did at the end.
Well, we think we want hyper realistic stories sometimes, and we really don't, right? We're really programmed to the Joseph Campbell journey of the hero.
Right.
You want to face off against the nemesis and come back, and I can tell Fleming was trying to do that, and like, here's how it really works sometimes, but we don't want to see how it really works sometimes. We want to see the most exciting possible outcome.
Right.
So
and I'm being so hypocritical right now, because in all the other past books we're like, oh, what, they fell into the pool of sharks? That would never happen. Like,
all right, shall we move on to The Living Daylights?
Sure.
So this story is where we get the cello, which I really like. I really like in the movie. It's kind of it gets a little bit meta because James Bond is staking out a spot to assassinate the assassin. They're trying to help one of the good guys escape across the border, and so Bond is going to be giving him cover and trying to take out the other sniper before the bad sniper kills the good guy. And so we come to find out he kind of has this one-sided love affair with the cello player, because the orchestra is playing over the 3 nights that they're there. The orchestra is going in and out of the building across the street. And this is in Berlin, correct?
I think so.
East and West Berlin.
So.
And so, they're playing a concert, and he falls in love with this cello player, just seeing her through his scope. And of course, she ends up being the assassin, and the cello case really had the gun inside of it. Mm-hmm. And he ends up not taking the kill shot because of his weird affection for her. And so the guy at the end, that was Bond's partner in the stakeout, says, I'll have to report it. It kind of basically ends there.
Yeah. And I liked the little line too that worked in the title. It was like, I didn't kill her, but I scared the living daylights out of her, and that was enough.
That's one of the best Family Guy jokes, is when the movies do that, because They do it in the Timothy Dalton movie, which we're about to review. But at one point, he's like, it was a little bit ham-handed when in the movie.
Yeah, it didn't feel quite as ham-handed in the story, I guess, because there wasn't somebody actually saying it.
And you kind of expect it in literature and like chapter titles. You expect to see them and it's okay, but for some reason in movies, it's just over the top. But yeah. I say it was meta because James Bond is reading a thriller novel as he's like biding the hours, because it's only going to happen at nighttime. They don't know which of the 3 nights it's going to happen. Of course, it's the third. So he's reading this thriller novel and it ratcheting up the tension, and his partner is a little bit of a kind of more buttoned up, stiff personality. So they're kind of clashing there as well. And then it does. This is a satisfying story because it does end in this, splash of gunfire and they have to escape. So it was a nice story.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It's another one of those that explores James Bond's distaste for killing in cold blood. He refers to it. You'd think somebody like him would just think that, okay, this is part of the job, but he refers to it when he's talking to Captain Cinder as a murder. And, at one point, as the tension is ratcheting up, the captain is visibly nervous and he's like, oh, what kind of, they finally see the gun of the enemy sniper emerging from the window. And Captain Cinder is like, what kind of gun is it? And Bond is like, shut up. You're not the one who has to commit a murder here. It's me. I should be nervous, not you. And you can see him really getting nervous. And then with his whole fantasy romance that he dreams up with this cellist, it's sort of interesting and rare. It's not unheard of. I mean, you get glimpses of it throughout the books way more so than you do in the movies, about him feeling pangs of genuine affection for women. And he's kind of a secret romantic at times. So I kind of liked that about the story. And that he didn't actually meet her.
Right.
I thought they were going to just find their way to each other somehow, particularly on his, because the missions were going on at nighttime, and during the day he sort of walked around the city and bought some books and all that kind of stuff. So I thought they were going to at some point meet somehow, and in a Bondy fashion, he was going to sweep her off her feet and she was going to fall in love, but she never met him. Right. And I kind of like that.
Yeah. Like he could have easily developed this into the full length novel, but I kind of like leaving it this way. And it highlights more the tragic nature of his character. We like to fantasize about him, being him and doing all of these things, having all these adventures. But it really is lonely. It leads to, you having to fantasize about this girl that you're just seeing through the scope of a gun because, your job is so tense and so lonely and so solitary. And you don't always end up, with these beautiful women. And even when you do, it's usually more of an empty relationship or short-lived. Mm-hmm. Sometimes literally short-lived because the women around him die so frequently.
Yeah.
All right.
One more thing I wanted to bring up. I meant to bring it up at the beginning and I forgot. I listened to the audio copy of this and it was read by Tom Hiddleston and it was fantastic. I don't honestly know him from all that much. I mean, I know he plays Loki in the Thor movies and like a handful of a smattering of other things. I think he played Hank Williams in a biopic, but I know he was somebody that people were clamoring to be the new Bond when they were trying to pick the next one. I don't know where that stands. Is it going to be a woman? Or was that just something that they're tossing around?
Charles would know more. I know there's been talk about Idris Elba too, which I would be super on board with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like him to be it. I haven't heard the woman thing. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I've heard that. So I guess it's not. I guess
Jane
it wasn't
Bond.
Yeah,
Joanna Bond.
But it was awesome. If anybody out there listening to this is inspired to check out the book, if you like audiobooks, I was enthralled by the whole performance. He did it so well. So
nice.
Strongly recommend.
I hadn't heard about that rumor of him being wanted for it.
Maybe he's auditioning.
Maybe.
Choice. Cool. All right, and last but not least, the super short story, 007 in New York. This is like only, 4 or 5 pages long? Maybe 6.
It was like
6 or
14
7.
minutes of audio.
Yeah. This was kind of a weird story because it's really not even a story, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's really just him spending some time in New York as he's getting ready for a rendezvous with a female agent?
Yeah.
Or is she just a contact?
She was a former British, like a staffer or something like that. And she was involved with a KGB person who was undercover, and she didn't know that he was associated with the KGB. And so they're trying to warn her.
So he's trying to warn her. They're supposed to meet at the reptile house at the Central Park Zoo. And so there's even a recipe for scrambled eggs in here for some reason from Felix Leiter.
Yeah.
Which, if you read the recipe, it sounds kind of gross to me. It's just basically a bunch of butter and scrambled eggs, and you keep them slightly softer than you would normally eat them, and then pour a bunch of butter over them. But anyway,
right.
And then it ends up that there's a bunch of awkward phone calls because there's no reptile house at the Central Park Zoo, so he's not able to meet up with her and have a rendezvous overnight. It's just going to be a quick meeting, and with tears and threats of suicide from the English girl, and it was all New York's fault. One can hardly credit the deficiency, but there is no reptile house at the Central Park Zoo. So it was just weird. It was like not even a James Bond story. It was more of like a almost humorous, more like a Roald Dahl story or something like that, with this weird twist at the end.
Yeah, it was very bizarre. I don't fully understand why it was included in this. It just seems like something that maybe could be published. I mean, I guess I don't know how else I expect them to do it, but it wasn't. Yeah,
they had to fill this out. If you're looking on the video, if you're watching our video, not just audio, it's a pretty thin book, so I think they just needed something to put in there. Maybe
it was such an unexpected burn of New York, and I felt like that was the point of it, was to kind of highlight James Bond's love of Queen and country, and sort of being snobby about America and New York, and how they.
I think you may also be able to read into it a little bit of reactionary type thing, where he's kind of seeing how the world is going now, because New York, America kind of took the reins in terms of culture in the world, and this is kind of where things are going, and he's more, like you said, a romantic and more traditional, and so it could be you could read some fittingness into because this is the last thing Fleming ever published about James Bond, so kind of a strange last piece, but also you could read nostalgia into it as well.
True. It made me chuckle, all the parts where he was like, oh, nobody knows how to eat or buy food in America, and they're too hygienic, and they're afraid to buy fresh things at the market because they think that they might go bad, but that's what's wrong with the world today. And then he started talking about how after he cozied up to his New York lady friend, and she would only kiss him for a certain amount of time, and then she had to disappear to the bathroom for half an hour to do who knows what. And it was it made me laugh, but also I was kind of raising my eyebrows while I was listening to it. Like, what is this?
And also in a post COVID-19 world, it's like, heck yeah, we're hygienic and we want our markets to be clean.
Yeah. No 3-day-old fish heads for you, James Bond.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, if that's all we have to say about the short stories, we will take a quick break from our sponsor, and we'll be back to talk about James Bond in the movies.
This episode brought to you by Fleming brand assorted venoms, poison, and toxins. Why use a gun for your assassinations when nature's already done half the work for you? For the low price of 2 Fabergé eggs, you can select from any of the Fleming brand assorted venoms, poisons, and toxins we offer. Black Widow venom, blue-ringed octopus poison, cat scratch fever, elephantitis juice, king cobra extract, honey badger blood. That's right, Fleming brand assorted venoms, poisons, and toxins are the cure for what ails you. Fleming brand products for you. And now back to the program.
All right, thank you from Fleming brand for sticking with us all these episodes too. It's pretty cool.
Products for you.
Yeah. So now let's do Kelley. Do you want to do the synopses of the movie since I did all the book ones? I don't want to
Sure.
steal your thunder.
Sure. Okay, so here is a synopsis of Octokitty, the movie. A fake Fabergé egg and a fellow agent's death lead James Bond to uncover an international jewel smuggling operation headed by the mysterious Octopussy, being used to disguise a nuclear attack on NATO forces.
Bond hits an all-time high. Roger Moore is Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 in Octopussy. Roger Moore in his newest and most thrilling of the James Bond adventures, filling the screen with excitement. In the tradition of the great James Bond films, Octopussy has everything: elegant palaces and beautiful women.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Name's Bond. I believe you have a reservation for me.
We've been expecting you, sir.
I'm Octopussy, and you are James Bond, 007 licensed to kill. Am I to be your target for tonight?
This is Bond at his best, hitting an all-time high in Octopussy.
Step on it.
The Bond that tops them all.
Follow that car.
Octopussy racing across the screen with thrills and excitement. Roger Moore in his newest James Bond adventure, hitting an all-time high in Octopussy.
So back to Kelley's favorite James Bond, Roger Moore,
Yes.
in a great movie. This is probably my second favorite Roger Moore film. I still love Man with the Golden Gun, but this is a pretty fun one for me. And
Mark.
Kelley's shaking her head.
No.
I mean, well, what are our options, right? Live and Let Die,
Live and let die.
A View to a Kill.
Live and Let Die
which-
is one of the best Roger Moore ones. Are you kidding me?
I don't know. Okay, so this one I think gets top marks for like more of a feminist approach. Octopussy herself is this really successful smuggler. She's a strong character. She's kind of raised all of these women, both circus performers and also super bad I don't know, like when they storm the thing at the end, it's like, oh, they're also like Navy SEALs too. But and so just in terms of what it borrows from the books, I like how they drew in the storyline. So instead of Major Smythe, it's Major Smythe's daughter is Octopussy, and she is we don't like, so her father, James Bond allowed her father to commit suicide, and I think she was actually thankful for that, right? So Bond says, "Are you going to kill me because of it?" She says, "No, you gave him a way out, and he didn't have to rot in a jail, or he didn't have to be court-martialed or even killed." So that's where that comes in, which I thought was pretty cool. And then, of course, the Fabergé egg is where the money came from the property of a lady. We've kind of talked before about how some of the plot points and twists get a little confusing in these movies, and I had a little bit of trouble keeping up with the money and who's, with Kamal Khan was the other bad guy, and Orlov. I'm like, okay, who are the alliances? Who's really on Bond's side? But it all sorted out in the end. It made sense.
Yeah, I agree, and you probably already know every single thing I'm about to say about this movie. But I mean, this is no secret. Yeah, Mark's teasing me. Roger Moore is my least favorite Bond, and it's not that I hate him. I just think I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, I'm usually not above a cheese factor on something, but his little one-liners, they just get me. I mean, I do laugh a lot while watching his Bond movies, where there's something to be said for that. I feel like there are so many more LOL moments. When Bond is driving in that little open air, oh my gosh, I don't even know what the word would be, but that little streetcar thing. And he's like, "Don't worry, it's a company car." And they do a really ride through the streets of this bazaar.
Well, and then, so here's how uncultured I am. I didn't know who VJ was. Super famous tennis player. And I just learned this like 2 days ago as I was looking up IMDb trivia on the movie. I always thought his name was BJ and that it was like another euphemistic nickname for these characters. And so I was completely off base with that. But at the time, I didn't know it when I was watching that scene when they're driving through the streets. I'm like, why is he using a tennis racket? This is so dumb. And then later I realized, he's a famous tennis player. Okay, I got it. But even so, it was pretty cheesy.
It was, and
there were like tennis sound effects as he was doing it over their heads and stuff.
Yes, and oh my gosh! Speaking of VJ, when they were playing backgammon or baccarat or whatever they were playing in the casino, and he took Bond. There's this moment where Bond realizes that Khan is using loaded dice to win, and so he kind of tricks him into giving him the dice somehow. And so Bond wins, and BJ picks up the loaded dice, and he's just holds them in his hand like this and just squeezes them until they turn to dust and crumple down onto the table. And it's just this hilariously dramatic moment.
Yeah.
It made me crack up.
I remembered that moment being... So the reason I like Roger Moore is because, I came to these movies when I was like 13 years old. And so these were like I was like the target audience for the Roger Moore movies at the time that I watched them with all this silliness. But looking back, I remember that scene being super dramatic, and looking back, it was really like seeing it again. It was really kind of stupid. They just zoom in on his eyes, and it's like nobody's. I don't know. That's not what happens to dice when you crush them. But anyway.
And why was he the one that was so upset? Like Khan was just like, he stormed out of there, but VJ was like, no.
Well, that wasn't. I think you're getting confused with the two characters. VJ was James Bond's right hand man.
Oh,
I'm thinking about the evil henchman, but yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But that was pretty dramatic.
Yeah,
it's just funny. So what I liked about VJ is because they, spoilers coming up, they kill him off, and he was kind of a really endearing character in this movie, and it's one of the few times, well, that's not true at all, but it's one of the few times I've felt for one of Bond's the ladies around him die all the time, which we've mentioned, but also his partners as he's making alliances. Felix Leiter gets run through the ringer, and a lot of his contacts end up dying as a result. This is one of the few times I really felt bad. Because he was so nice, kind of so innocent and funny and nice comedic relief. And then when he dies, that it kind of sets a little more serious tone even for a Roger Moore movie.
Yeah, that's true. That I will say that's true.
Even if he was killed by a giant yo-yo of death, giant razor yo-yo of death, which is also way over the top and not a weapon anybody has ever used in any. Maybe it is. Maybe I don't know. Maybe in Castle's zooming it down. If you haven't seen the movie, it's like these two circular saw blades on a yo-yo type steel line and slashes it down and up. But anyway, that guy actually broke his arm when he landed on Octokitty's bed in that scene where Bond pulls him down. He broke his arm and kept filming the scene. So kudos to that guy.
That's art right there. Dedication, my friend.
So what did you think? Okay, so did you notice that Maud Adams, who plays Octokitty, was also one of the Scaramanga's girlfriends?
No, I didn't know
so
that.
she plays two different characters in two different Roger Moore Bond movies, which I found really interesting.
That is interesting. I did not put that together. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe if we didn't go 13 months in between episodes, I would have remembered that. I mean, I've never done that.
You'd think we would have noticed because we just watched The Man with the Golden Gun last month.
Well, and on that note, you and I were talking earlier, Mark, did we ever post the last episode?
No, we have not posted The Man with the Golden Gun yet. So they'll actually, really we just did it.
But that makes it an even longer gap between that one and the previous one.
Yeah. Yeah, show does. Okay. So the only other thing I'd written down here was, yes, there is a nuke, right? But then also, I liked the plane scene where Roger Moore is legit, like, just hanging on to the biplane as it's zooming through. That's not a biplane. I think it's a jet. That's a jet. I can't remember. But he's, like, holding on, and they filmed. You can tell they filmed it. You can tell he was wearing a parachute. The stuntman was wearing a parachute, obviously, but it still was pretty cool and kind of tense. He's trying to get in the plane.
Yeah, I mean, despite the cheese factor, I mean, Roger Moore, I feel like he's got some good action scenes in his movies. I wish that some of the action, and this is not specific to Roger Moore, it's like a flaw, I guess you could say, in my opinion, of just about all these older Bond movies. Is that I feel like they could be at least 30 or 40 minutes shorter. And we've talked about that before, but I definitely, and it's only because of my prejudice towards Roger Moore, but his movies always drag out a little extra for me. And so somewhere around 2/3 of the way in, there's always a drawn out chase sequence or
the best boat chase ever filmed.
The best Sheriff Julius Pepper.
You are right, though. You are right.
So I always get lost, and you always, if you zone out for a minute, you miss something crucial. You're like, oh, this is going on forever. I'm just going to look down at, I'm going to make a comment to who I'm watching with, or I'm going to look at my phone for a second. And then you look up and they're like on a train and you're like, how in the world did they get here?
Yeah. It's probably one of the reasons it's easy to lose the thread sometimes because you tune out through those sequences.
Yeah.
But I think they're trying to make them longer, more fun action movies. But by today's standards, if you're gonna make a movie close to 2 hours, it better be tightly written and necessary.
Yes,
for sure.
But I mean, that's one of the things I really appreciate about the Daniel Craig films is that they're just as long, but they don't feel as long to me.
Right.
Because it's just tighter storytelling or something. The action's more effective. I'm not sure what it is, but
yeah. So the last thing I wanted to say about this movie is this sticks out to me as being unique because I think the Bond girl, this is one of the few instances where she really equals Bond in power, also wit, control, influence, right? She's wealthy and she's like a player. She's one of the three players in this movie in terms of like the plot points of the money moving around and all of that. And she ends up being, good at the end. But I like that about this, where it seems like they're on equal footing. Whereas most other ones, it's more of the male fantasy, damsel in distress. Not always, but she definitely, I think, is the most powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. She's a very cool character.
which makes for a nice, like, unique Bond movie compared to all the others.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
We didn't even talk about what is her name? Oh my goodness, Magda. Is it Magda? The one who is the associate of Khan, whom he meets in the casino, and then they have dinner together, and then escapades.
She reminded me of The Spy Who Loved Me actress, actually. Because
a
lot of those scenes shot me back, and I forgot that we weren't about to go to the pyramids. But anyway, why do you mention her?
I just that little throwaway scene when they're making Whoopi, and he sees the tattoo on her back, and he's like, "What's this?" And she's like, "Well, that's my little Octopussy." And it's just like you really had to just work that in there, didn't you?
Got to say it.
Yeah.
So did Octavia, the actual Octopussy, did she talk about the background of the octopus? I thought she did, but I remembered it from watching it a long time ago, but I don't remember seeing it in this movie.
I think she did when he first came to her palace or whatever, and she had the blue octopus in the tank. I think she said something about how her father loved octopuses or octopi, or
I think it was his pet name for her, even, right? Mm-hmm. Am I misremembering that? Okay.
No, it is, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she was an interesting, like, patch character, because we couldn't meet Octopussy too early, so they needed Magda's character to kind of bridge the gap. But then it seemed kind of weird that he had slept with her and then later would sleep with Octavia. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a weird dynamic in terms of just the plot line and storytelling.
Yeah, it was, for sure. All right. Well, should we talk about?
Yeah, we can. I just found an image of the Spy Who Loved Me character on the video. See what I mean? They kind of have similar, like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And honestly, she kind of looks like the woman from The Living Daylights as well, to me.
Yeah, I could see that.
They're like all forming a hybrid in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So on that note, good transition into The Living Daylights.
Thank you. James Bond is sent to investigate a KGB policy to kill all enemy spies and uncovers an arms deal that potentially has major global ramifications.
The name that means excitement is back. Bond. James Bond.
That girl must be very talented.
Shoot up. Believe me, my interest in her is purely professional.
What is this?
I've had a few optional extras installed.
Wherever he goes, adventure follows.
Two of our men are dead. Koskov's named you.
Then I must die.
Eliminate him.
Killing! He lives for danger. He lives for the moment. He lives on the edge.
Whoever she was, I must have scared the living daylights out of her.
James Bond, 007, The Living Daylights.
And there we have The Living Daylights, the first Timothy Dalton movie to move us out of the Roger Moore era, much to Kelly's enjoyment and overt joy.
Indeed.
Yeah, man. Okay, so I think George Lazenby comes closest to the look of James Bond when I picture what he would look like. But I think Timothy Dalton does the best personality in terms of, like, matching to the book. I think so, because Sean Connery is still my favorite, but Sean Connery is so Sean Connery, you know, he's so iconic and unto himself that it's hard. I can't conflate the two. Whereas with Timothy Dalton, I can see him, like, he's got more of the severe personality traits of the Bond from the Ian Fleming novels. So I enjoyed this movie because I enjoyed his performance, even though there was weaknesses in the movie. But I liked him. What do you think, Kelley?
That is really interesting. So you like Timothy Dalton as far as it compares to the book, even over Daniel Craig?
Yeah, I think Daniel Craig is too gritty.
Okay.
I think you lose like the romantic thing you were talking about. I think you lose some of the nostalgia. I mean, I love Daniel Craig as James Bond. I love Casino Royale and the other two as well. But I just think Timothy Dalton gets that just from having read all the books and seeing his performance. I think he matches it the best.
That's.
I would have liked to have seen him in like earlier films or later films or something like that. I feel because these films are so 1980s that filter kind of kicks me out of it, out of the reality of the book. But what were you going to say? Sorry, I kind of talked over you.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, I like Timothy Dalton too. It hadn't occurred to me that but I mean, I agree. Now that you're saying that, I agree with what you're saying about like the romantic aspect. And I mean, Daniel Craig just utterly nails the coldness of him. But I mean, you're right. Outside of the first one, when we see him feeling romantic and lovelorn over Vesper, you do lose that in the rest of the film. So yeah, I mean, and while Timothy Dalton does have that hardness to him, he has. I mean, there's like a softy romantic, but there's also kind of a cheekiness about him that I find really entertaining because it's not cheesy, but it's just a little bit dimply and like a wink and a smile kind of thing.
There's a lot of like youth in his performance. A lot of the things he does, like when he flops on the bed at the opening sequence, he like lands in this woman's yacht and flops on the bed. It's kind of like he's a teenage kid, but then he can also be really mature and adult in other scenes. He's got that sly smile as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I think he's very handsome. I mean, I think you're right. He does fit the look. And feeling all of those things, I wonder why they didn't have him do more because he only did 2. I mean, outside of George Lazenby, he was the one who did the fewest. So I wonder if he just wasn't excited about the role or if they didn't like him for whatever reason.
I don't know. Charles, do you have any insider knowledge about that? I know you're more of the...
I'm saying again, I was watching the thing. I think we dropped some frames there. What was the question?
Why did Timothy Dalton only do 2 movies? Was there a reason they moved away from him?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I know I believe it was the longest gap between his movie and Pierce Brosnan's and in GoldenEye, which is in 95 from like 89. So it was a 6-year gap. And I think he wanted to do another one. I think he did. But I don't think his approach, I don't think people really appreciated it at the time.
That's unfortunate.
And, I also think he was one of the ones that wanted to play it whenever Sean Connery was leaving. I think he wanted to do it, if I remember right, even he would have been the next one out, in place of Roger Moore. So... that would have been interesting, I think, because you were mentioning his movies are so 80s. If he'd have done Live and Let Die instead of Roger Moore, what would that have been like? Or if he'd have done it on Her Majesty's Secret Service instead of Lazenby, what would that have been like? I don't know. I kind of do feel like Timothy Dalton was ahead of his time, and that's unfair for him. So, but yeah, I think there was. I don't know. I don't think this one or License to Kill did as well with him, so I think that was part of the issue.
Yeah, because it seemed like they were gearing it toward a different audience. The Living Daylights was a much more, I think I already said mature, but it was like a much more mature film. There wasn't all this cheeky stuff that Kelley hates from Roger Moore, which I enjoyed in this movie because it was kind of refreshing when they did do little humorous parts, like, oh, that's really funny because it's comedic relief, right? It's it's giving us relief, and instead of Roger Moore, there's no need for relief because you never feel he's actually.
Well, and the next one, License to Kill, I think was the first PG-13 Bond,
as opposed to PG.
Yeah, they were all PG up to that point, even Octopussy. But they got pretty intense. Like they're very 80s, but they're also very intense. Like the next one gets pretty violent. So,
yeah.
One thing that did sort of make me chuckle, when Bond is on the plane and they find the organ transplant container that's full of the
diamonds.
Yeah, the diamonds and the animal heart. Did you notice that on the side, instead of saying something like fragile or handle with care,
yes,
it says handle like eggs?
Yes. What? I did notice that.
Is that a Russian thing? I don't know.
Handle like eggs. Like Fabergé eggs. Yeah. So I did also my favorite joke was the Q's ghetto blaster. It's like this guy with a boombox that turns into a rocket launcher. It's this old British guy. They call it the ghetto blaster.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. I was the only other thing I had to mention was that Timothy Dalton really got his start with the movie Sextet with Mae West.
Oh man!
So it comes full circle.
That little gem.
Yeah.
I didn't really. I don't know what to think about his leading lady in this movie. They departed from the way they wrote it in the book, of course, because they had to, because it was a movie and it was much longer, and they needed to throw some romance in there. But obviously, instead of her being this professional KGB sniper who is on equal footing with Bond, they play it like she's not really trained at all, and that was how he knew that she was not a sniper, was because she was waving the gun all over the place and she didn't know right from left and whatnot. And so he lets her live because it's obvious that she's not. This is like not her. She was doing it because she was involved with the defector. And so, yeah, I don't know. She just wasn't. I mean, she wasn't one of the worst Bond girls, but she was kind of not inspiring at the same time. What did you think about her?
I'd agree with that portrayal. I thought it was a creative way to take the content from the short story and adapt it.
Yeah.
So I liked from the writing end of it, but in terms of the acting, I agree. She's kind of just vanilla, kind of. I mean, there were no scenes that really allowed her to kind of pop off the screen or make a stake for herself inside of this movie.
Yeah.
But one of the weaknesses or one of the problems I had with it was kind of the director didn't make the plot like the turning events very clear. Like it kind of I kind of had to keep catching up with who felt what about whom. Like when Timothy Dalton finally said he's the girlfriend of the defector, I was like, oh, and he's pretending just to be a friend, and they're not really falling in love yet because she's remaining faithful to what's his name? Not Koskov. Was it Koskov?
Koskov, yeah.
Yeah. And so then I was like, oh, okay. And then we learned that Koskov was really a double agent, and then he was really, a bad guy. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But then she was still kind of loyal to him and didn't believe it. But it was never quite clear what any of the relationships were to me. Maybe I'm just daft, but I don't think so. It was. I think it was because they were being almost too subtle with this movie.
Yeah. No, I agree. I thought that same exact thing. Yeah, and I did not zone out of this one. I did not look away and then realize they were on a train 5 minutes later. I was honed in, and I still it was hard to keep track of it.
Makes me feel better.
Yeah,
makes me not feel so dumb.
No.
You talked about the movies being too long at times. This one didn't have it had a nice climactic scene, but then it took too long, I think, for the denouement, because they were we finally find out he's getting all this money and he's going to invest it basically in opium where he can turn a quick profit. So he's basically trying to make extra interest off of this already like illegal money laundering scheme. And so they end up in this plane trying to fly the opium out of the Middle East, and that's the major like fight scene where Bond had planted a bomb and the plane's about to explode, and he's fighting the henchmen trying to get to the bomb so it doesn't explode because they were able to get the plane. And that was all cool and great. And it was a nice tense scene. But then you had like another couple scenes, and there was another like cleanup of Koskov, and then you had, then you finally had the performance at the end. So I feel like this could have been tidied up much quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Also, points for the excellent and appropriate use of denouement.
Oh, thank you.
You literary person.
As an English teacher,
yes,
you've got to know it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So no nuke in this one, right? It was just it was C4 bomb.
Nope. Yep.
So, and that was going to be my first comment too. Was it's hard. It's hard to follow a nuke storyline, right? Because in this one, it's an arms deal that potentially has major global ramifications. It's like, but you could have just thrown in a nuke and it would have made it better, right? So anyway,
we need to maybe next time when we do our wrap up episode, we need to count out how many times a nuke was involved. I don't think we ever did that.
So I think our homework should be, I want to kind of follow the thread with what's his name, the bad guy in the books and movies,
Blofeld,
and kind of see where was he, like how did they handle that now that we've read all the books, because in the movies we kept coming at it at different timelines. So I want to see that, and then we need to track the nukes and then do the extra movies. So that'll be fun.
Cool. Maybe we can talk next time too, just briefly. Now that we've read them all, which one is our favorite movie? We've probably touched on it as we've gone along, but this has been quite a journey, and maybe things have changed. I don't know.
So how would you rate because we normally do who did it better.
Mm-hmm.
So with it's kind of harder with the stories, but what do you think with Octokitty?
I think Book did it better.
Agreed. Even though I do enjoy in the world of Roger Moore movies, I enjoyed this one more, but I agree. And then Living Daylights, I don't know. What do you think? Who did it better, story or movie?
I don't know. That is it's hard because I mean, I really enjoyed the story, but I also really liked this movie, and I liked the way they adapted it. So I'll go with movie on this one.
Okay, I'm going to take book then. I think I like the story better.
Okay.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, from here, you guys can check us live on Facebook or listen to the replay on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube by searching Here and There. Or head over to the website, itsjustawesome.com, all one word. And whatever your preferred method is, please be sure to subscribe, like, review, all of the stuff. It really does help. And James Bond Here and There will return in the Roundup episode. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.